So yeah, performance nutritionist here at the center. My background involves many sports as a kid, but then eventually I kind of got better at volleyball, I guess, and I love volleyball a bit more. I played post-secondary volleyball in Winnipeg and also in Alberta, and I still play volleyball, so I'm pretty active still in the sport community. And I also have learned more how to like the outdoors with my dog and my boyfriend, and so I took a picture of my dog, and that's me playing volleyball, in case you guys can believe me. And I like food. I thought those are appropriate to put up. All right, so for tonight, what I'll do first is I'll kind of go over some basics. So we'll talk about water and electrolytes and how those are important for your body, but also for performance. And then after that, we'll talk about how you can monitor your hydration status, both by yourself and also some testing that we might do with some athletes as well. Or that if you want to get fancy and buy the machines yourself, you can definitely do that too. And then after that, I'll talk about more some strategies about what to do before, during, and after your competition or training. And there's a lot of variability in that section, but I'll try and make it as clear as possible. And then at the end, just a few tips to stay hydrated. All right. And if you have any questions throughout, please lift up your hand and let me know. I'm more than happy to answer questions, but I can definitely answer questions at the end as well. Okay, so first, hydration and performance. Oh yeah, and to clear with you guys, I have a whole bunch of myth and facts questions, so I'll ask you to raise your hand if you think it's myth or fact, and I'll do one or the other. So the human body is made up of 80% water. So lift up your hand if you think that this is true. Okay, a couple hands. Anybody else thinks it's false? False. So this is a myth. 80% is a little bit high. Okay, so overall, our body is about 60 to 65% water. But there are some body parts that are a lot higher water content than others, right? So things that are important are the brain, our eyes, and our blood. Obviously, that has a lot of water in it. So people think that it's a really high number of water, but it's about 60 to 65. But what is water important for in the body? So water helps us to regulate our body temperature through sweating. That's the main way that we do that. Also with breathing. So water is important in exchange for breathing oxygen and for making sure our lungs are working properly, which is why the lungs are up there at 85% water as well. Also for muscle contraction, water is really important for that too. And digestion. So a lot of the things that we eat need water in order to be digested, in order to be absorbed. We have certain vitamins that are only absorbable with water in that process. So that's really important for that too. And if you think about it, when you ingest water, that helps kind of move things along as well. And also, as you can see, the brain is made up of a big percent of water as well. So our brain works better when it is hydrated. So cognitive function is also something that's really important with water. And lastly, circulation. So our blood is a very high percent of water, and that helps us get all the nutrients that we need across our body and oxygen as well. Okay, so all of those processes in the body are really important for water. And so how does that relate back to sport? Does anybody have any guesses? Body temperature, I kind of gave that away a little bit. So we're sweating, we're working really hard. The body doesn't really like to be out of homeostasis or equilibrium, essentially. So our body is always working to bring down our body temperature when we're exercising, and that's why we're sweating, right? So body temperature, sweating, that happens during sports. What about the next one? Anybody else? I'll just keep going through them. I should have brought prizes, like food to give out, right? Yeah. All right, so breathing, exercise capacity. So if you think about it, when your lungs are really tired and you can't breathe anymore, you probably stop, or you're not trying as hard, or you can't keep playing, or you can't keep running, that kind of thing, right? So if you think about how important water is for your lungs, then you think about how it can impact your breathing and maybe help you work a little bit harder, a little bit longer, right? And also muscle contraction. So strength. What if your muscle isn't as strong as it can be? What if it's not contracting as much as it can be, right? So if you're trying to kick a ball or swing a bat or something like that, you're going to be a little bit better if your muscles are well hydrated. And digestion. So that's giving us the energy that we need, right? So if we don't have enough water and if our gut isn't working properly, then we probably aren't maximizing how much energy and nutrients we can be getting from our food. And that can be a really big player in how we perform. And lastly, or actually I have two more. So mental focus, right? So let's say your coach is asking you to do something and you can't really wrap your head around it or something like that, or you might not be able to understand. Some of that might actually be related to dehydration. So mental focus is a big one too. And lastly, blood supply, right? So When you're working out, your blood is pumping a little bit faster, your heart is beating a little bit harder, right? So you need that water to get all the nutrients and the oxygen back to your muscles, right? So if you're not doing that, then your blood supply is also very important. So that's just in general, and I tried to give examples of how that is related back to sport. So next we'll move on to electrolytes. So are electrolytes important for muscle contraction as well? Who thinks that's true? Well, who thinks that's false? Okay. Actually, it's true. So I have a YouTube video. Yay! We'll just play this one.
The famous electrolyte. Sports drink commercials love talking about them, but what are they? Why do we eat them? And what happens if we don't have enough of them? Electrolytes are salts. Actually, they're salts that we take into our body, usually by way of food. Electrolytes dissolve into positive and negative charges and conduct electricity in water. The most common one is sodium chloride or table salt. These are the uncommon electrolytes that we body, also known as ions. These charges are crucial because they control the flow of water in our cells and nerve impulses in our bodies. Ion channels and cell membranes regulate the flow of positive and negative charges through cells. Water follows these charges and it always goes to the side that has the greater number of electrolytes. Thanks, osmosis. Without the balancing act between electrolytes and water, our cells would shrivel up and die or burst from being too full. In nerve cells, a positive ion moving through an ion channel sparks off an electrical impulse, signaling our bodies to function properly. That's right. Electrolytes control the constant impulses in our body to keep our hearts beating, our lungs breathing, and our brains learning. So yeah, electrolytes are very important. They also make your sweat salty. When working out, our bodies start to heat up. Ion channels in our cells dump electrolytes or salts into the sweat gland. Thanks to osmosis, water follows closely behind. This increases the pressure in the gland so that salty mix gets pushed out of your skin. When that water evaporates, it pulls the heat off your body and cools you down, leaving a salty residue behind. But if you lose too many electrolytes, your nerves won't work properly, which can lead to problems with your heart, blood pressure, breathing, and you'll definitely not be performing fast.
I described it a bit better than I would, so I figured I'd go with that. So yeah, electrolytes are minerals or salts. So when they're like sodium and chloride go together, they're a salt, but they're essentially minerals, right? And they have a charge. So yes, they are important in muscle contraction. Actually, calcium is really important in muscle contraction and making sure that it happens appropriately and at the right time. And also potassium is really important for your heartbeat. Okay, so the rhythm of your heartbeat, potassium is also really important there. So electrolytes are definitely important for muscle contraction, but also fluid balance, kind of as the movie, the YouTube video describes. So it helps regulate how much water is coming in and out of cells, and that makes that's really important during performance to make sure that our cells and everything is functioning properly. And then lastly, nerve function as well, right? So you want to make sure you're reacting properly, and so nerves are really important for that. So electrolytes also play a big role in that area as well. So I already talked about how sweat is one of those ways that we lose water and electrolytes. Does anybody have any other ideas how you lose water and electrolytes other than sweating? How else does water come out of your body? Pee, yeah, urine, woohoo! Okay, there's two more. Okay, so sweat and urine. Anybody have any other guesses for anything else? Bowel movements, okay, so not just pee, also your poop. There's also a little bit of water and electrolytes that get lost there. And also breathing. So remember when I was talking about the lungs? You also lose water when you're breathing, okay? And you're breathing all day, every day, okay? So that's also another way that we lose water. And approximately we lose 2 to 3 liters a day. So that's a lot of water, and that's why we need to drink so much water, okay? And that's just regular, everyday sweat, urine, breathing, okay? So when you're an athlete, that's a little bit more important because you might be sweating a little bit more and you might need a little bit more water, right? Okay, so next myth or fact. A 2% decrease in body weight or body water can lead to a decreased performance. Who thinks that's true? A couple of you, who thinks that's false? Okay. So it is true, okay? 2% of your body weight can definitely lead to decreased performance. There's a lot of studies that have shown that calculating how much water or weight you've lost, aka how much water you've been sweating out and things like that. At that 2% mark, that's when things kind of go downhill, right? And that 5% mark is actually when things get really bad and you might not be in such good shape and you might not be playing at all. But yeah, so that's the percentage there. So we kind of talked about these things already, how dehydration can affect your body during sport. So work capacity, how much you can actually work, how much you can actually run. Also how things seem harder, right? So you're tired, you're fatigued, right? So things might seem harder to do, right? Some drills might seem harder to do, or running after a ball might seem harder to do. I guess I'm talking about soccer because of this picture. Also, like we said, cognitive function. So if your coach is asking you to do something, or if you need to decide who to pass to, sometimes your brain isn't working properly, so that's when that might come into play. Even just comprehension of what you're trying to do during the play. Muscle cramping, that's a very common one as well. We talked about muscle contraction, so electrolytes there too. It could be either tired muscles or also water or electrolyte related that you're cramping too. Okay, so when you're cramping, you're probably not performing your best. And then also just muscle tiredness. So when your muscles are feeling heavy and tired and you don't want to push anymore, that also could be dehydration related. And also GI issues. Not so fun, cramping, bloating, those kinds of things too. You don't want to have those things going on when you're trying to run around and trying to play well. Okay, so that's kind of my background on why it's important and how it can affect performance. And now we'll talk a bit more about how you can figure out how hydrated you are. So myth or fact, thirst is the best indicator of dehydration status. Who thinks this is true? A couple people. Who thinks thirst is not the best indicator? More people? Okay, you guys would be right. Thirst is actually a late signal of hydration. So your body, like I was talking about before, likes to be in equilibrium, right? So your kidneys are actually helping with electrolytes and things like that to balance the water in your body already. So by the time you get thirst, the kidneys are saying, okay, we don't have enough, we still need more, okay? So you're already kind of in that dehydrated state. So that one would be a myth. So I made a fun little chart. This is the first way to self-monitor your pee. So pee color is something that a lot of people can do. It's something that you don't need help with. You can do it yourself. I can send you to the washroom. You can tell me what color it is, and we can call it a day. So the lighter color pee would be well hydrated. Somewhere in the middle would be hydrated. And then if it's very, very dark, that's when you're probably in some trouble. If you're seeing it a little brown or maybe a little bit bloody, that's also, unless you've had beets, but that would also be not good. So some tips to follow with urine color is that you want to look at your pee midstream. A little bit harder for girls to do, but you don't want to look at it in the toilet bowl because it's going to be diluted, right? There's already water in there, so it's going to be diluted a little bit. So you want to check it midstream to see where you're falling on this chart on, okay? And then I suggest to do this about 60 minutes before your game or practice. So I would say 1 to 2 hours before, so you can maybe get some more water in so you're a little bit more hydrated, okay? So that's a good time to check it. And then like I said before, if it's dark or bloody, please see a medical professional. That might indicate something else is going on. The second way to self-monitor your pee is also the frequency and volume. So how often you're peeing and how much you're peeing. So if you ask someone, how often do you pee in a day? And they say, oh, I don't know, maybe once or twice. They probably aren't hydrated enough, especially for an athlete, okay? So also the quantity is a big thing too. So if you're peeing, I don't know, every few hours, but you're not peeing very much, then you might not be hydrated at all either, right? So that's something to monitor. And also it can go the other way. You can overhydrate as well. So are you waking up in the middle of the night to pee? Because then that disrupts your sleep, right? And then you might not be rested enough to play well the next day. So if you're getting up to pee too often, especially in the middle of the night, once or twice, that's really not good for your performance if you're not sleeping well, okay? So those are the things you want to keep in mind as well on top of the color if you're going to self-monitor your hydration. Oh yes, the goal is every 2 to 3 hours, pee, light color pee, that's the goal. If it's completely clear, you're probably overdoing it, okay? Does that make sense? Has anybody here checked their pee color before? Yeah, okay, I have. All right, okay, sounds good. So that's a really good, easy way to do it. Now I'm going to talk about a couple ways that we do testing with athletes that's a little bit more invasive, we'll say, or a little bit more in your face about it. And the first one is urine specific gravity, or USG test. So this actually measures the density of the water or compared to your urine. So if you think about it, water is clear, right? So water density, we'll say, is equal to 1. And urine will have a lot of other things in it, right? Like a lot of waste and a lot of electrolytes and things like that in it, right? So that the higher concentration, the more yellow it is almost, right? The higher number you're gonna have. So we have a refractometer. I think we have one here that we can use. I also have like an old YouTube video for this one. That's like from the 1990s, but I think it's a good little video to show you what it kind of would be like. So yes, I would take your urine sample in a cup, and then I would do this. So.
We're pressing the stone. If this sample applied to the lens, levels are shown on the display.
That's kind of how to use it.
Insufficient sample is on the lens to take a read. We now apply the sample of water to get a zero.
The water is the base. It's the basis.
And with samples applied to the lens to cover it. Now press start. A value of 1.000, specific gravity water, should now be shown. Let it now be dry, clean, for applying sample period. Get the sample period is applied in the same manner. The sample commands rest.
Okay, so that just kind of shows you that it compares it to water, and then we can see what the concentration of your pee is. So then we can go back to our chart here. Our chart here. So then you can kind of see we line you up as to how hydrated you are depending on the density of your urine when that number comes up on that machine, okay? It's a lot easier sometimes to put this chart next to that color chart, and then that way you can know, okay, like my pee was this color today, and that was in this range. Now I know how hydrated I am. So that's just one way that we can actually do testing for athletes. A lot of the time it's actually helpful to do it before their competition so they know if they're doing well or not before. All right, myth or fact? Rates of sweating, so sweat rates are different for everyone. Who thinks this is true? Yay. It is true. Yeah, so everybody sweats a bit differently. So that's the last way that we can test kind of hydration status or how much hydration you need with athletes. So there's a lot of different things that can affect how much you sweat. So activity, the duration or the intensity. So the longer you are working out, maybe the more you're sweating, the hotter you're getting. How intense is it, right? How hard are you working? You might be sweating a little bit more if you're working a little bit harder, your muscles are a bit warmer. Warm climate or humidity, those things are also important. So if you're working out in Florida versus working out indoors here in Winnipeg, you might be sweating a little bit different, and that might affect your hydration level a bit differently as well, right? So those are things to keep in mind, as well as just individual differences. Body size, that kind of thing, how much weight you're moving around might also affect how much you're actually sweating. So like I said before, the goal is to have less than 1 to 2% dehydration during physical activity. And so when we calculate a sweat rate, we can also calculate how much percentage of dehydration you have so that we can know, okay, you're losing this amount of water during this amount of time, this is how much you need to rehydrate, and this is how much percent dehydration you're having. So not that I want to get into the math too much, but I just wanted to give you guys an example of what that calculation might look like. So what we're taking into consideration is your pre-weight, so before your practice or your tournament or whatever it is, or your game, and then your post-weight, so we're looking at weights. We're also taking into consideration how long this activity is. Yeah, feel free to take a picture. I also go through an example after. We also it's very invasive because we also consider how much you're actually drinking. So we have to measure how much of your water bottle you're drinking throughout that time because you're taking water in. But also if you go to the washroom, right? So let's say at this game is 2 hours and at halftime you go pee, we have to collect your pee, which isn't that fun, but sometimes it happens, right? So that's, we have to take into consideration all water when you're looking at sweat loss. So essentially what it calculates is kind of a sweat rate, so a milliliter per minute, or you can do milliliter per hour, depending on how long the activity is, and then you can just divide how much of that milliliter by your body weight to see how much percentage you've lost. 1 gram is about 1 milliliter as well, so that's just an example. So here's not that you have to know the math, I just thought I would go through with you. So here we weighed somebody, they were 81 kilograms. After practice, they were 80.2 kilograms. So the practice was about 75 minutes, so just over an hour. They did drink 600 milliliters, and they did go to the washroom, not very much, but we had to calculate that too, so just under half a cup. They peed. So then there's our calculation. As I kind of described before, we add them all up. So overall, sweat loss was 1,300 milliliters, so just over a liter, almost a liter and a half, okay? So then we can divide it by the time. So essentially, they were losing 17.33 milliliters every minute of sweat. So they're sweating pretty hard, okay? And that's an average, obviously. It could vary throughout the activity, but this is the average. So then we take that 1,300 and divide it by their weight. So 8,100, we just make it into grams instead of kilograms, and then we can calculate their percent dehydration. So this helps us to know how fast they're sweating and individually, as well as how much they need to be drinking during and also maybe after. Okay, and also if they are sweating a lot, we need to. Someone who's going to be at a higher percentage, you might need to monitor a little bit closer because they might have more detriment to their performance compared to someone who's not sweating as much and might be lower in their dehydration percentage, right? So just an example for you guys there. Does that make sense though? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to get too natty, but an example might help. All right, so yeah, sweaty guy. All right, so now we'll talk about strategies and choices for pre, during, and after either a game or some sort of competition. So myth or fact, hydration strategies should be individualized. Who thinks that's true? Okay, yeah, so like we just talked about, sweat rate is individual. Everybody will have different hydration levels and different body functions. So yeah, it has to be individualized. It used to be that they used to give a certain amount of cups per day for everybody to follow, but now we're trying to be more conscious of the fact that everybody's a little bit different, and so now it's a little bit more complicated than just your 8 to 10 cups of water a day. So yeah, sweat rate, exercise duration, climate. Also, one thing that we didn't talk about before that might affect your hydration is actually your access and opportunities to rehydrate, okay? So some of you guys have water bottles here, that's great, some of you guys don't, so that would be something that would affect your hydration, right? You don't have access to drinking water necessarily with you throughout this hour, right, if you don't have a water bottle. Some sports don't have that many breaks, or they're out on the water, so they might not be able to refill their water bottles, or those kinds of things too, right? So those are things you have to consider as well when you're making a hydration plan for someone, or you're trying to think about, what can we do to help you stay hydrated? So yeah, that's something else that you need to consider because it depends on the sport and the place, if you're in the field, etc. Okay, so like I said before, they used to have guidelines, 8 to 10 cups of water per day for adult women, men about 10 to 12 cups. So that's like a general guideline for somewhere to start. But like we said, it will really depend on a lot of different things. So if you want to start there, that's a good place to start. And then you can kind of build or take away from that as you need with those self-monitoring techniques, okay? One thing to remember is that you want to be hydrated the day before your competition. So a lot of the times athletes are getting up in the morning when they haven't been drinking for about 8 or 9 hours or however you're sleeping, and they don't have a long time to rehydrate prior to their activity because let's say their game's at 9 a.m. or something like that, right? You don't have a lot of time to drink a lot of water that you've maybe been losing overnight when you were reading and peeing in the morning and things like that, right? So making sure you're hydrated the day before is also really important. It's not just the day of. No matter what time your game is at or anything like that, you want to make sure you're hydrated the day before, especially if it's in the morning. So like I said, now we're moving more towards, body size, suggestions on how much water to have in. So that 2 to 4 milliliters per pound of water, and then 2 to 4 hours prior to exercise. It's a big range, and that's why it's so individual and it's hard to pinpoint. But that's something for you guys to start with and start to experiment with. So I kind of gave an example. If you're 150 pounds, that's about 1 to 2 cups of water 2 to 4 hours prior to exercise, right? So if you did that check 2 hours, that pee check, let's say you pee 2 hours before your game and you're like, oh, it's pretty dark yellow. Maybe you want to go more towards the 600 milliliters. Or you're like, okay, I'm doing pretty good, maybe just a cup or 2, so then I don't really have to pee right during my game, right? So that I have a chance to pee before my game. So that's kind of why it's a couple hours before, so that your body has time to kind of rehydrate, and you also have the opportunity to pee, and then it's not slushing around in your belly, okay? If that makes sense. Yeah, so like I said, it depends on your urine check there too. If we are checking, if we're checking sweat rates, and if we're actually using a USG, you might have a different system in place, but this is just something that you can do at home and on your own. Any questions about pre-hydration strategies? Pretty straightforward? Yeah, makes sense? Okay. All right, next one. Myth or fact, sport drinks are the best option for hydration. Who thinks this is true? Oh, good. Yay, it's a myth. Actually, a lot of people do think that sport drinks are the way to go. They have Gatorade or Powerade or whatever at every game and every practice because they think that that's just really good for hydration. And it's not that it's not good for hydration, it's just that sport drinks have other things in them like carbohydrates in varying amounts depending on which one you have. And disclaimer, I'm not talking about energy drinks, I'm just talking about sport drinks. So picture the Gatorade. So that has carbohydrate, electrolytes, and water. But sometimes you might not actually need that extra carbohydrate, which is just energy, okay? Electrolytes and water won't actually give you energy. They'll just make sure you don't feel crummy and you perform a bit better. So I'll go through a few different scenarios where you will require, or a sport drink might be a good idea versus when a sport drink might not be a good idea. But overall, water is very good at rehydrating and in general can be used in all competition, okay? So it's encouraged at any session. Oh yeah, so in general, so this is every hour of play, 400, so about a cup to 2 cups or 3 cups of water for every hour of play. So that would be a good general place to start for some water guidelines during. Okay, so when you will not require a sport drink is activity that's under an hour or of low intensity. So if it's something where it's a practice, but it's maybe more positioning and you're not actually running a lot or that kind of thing, you might not actually need water, okay? A lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to the gym, I need to have a sport drink or whatever, but if your workout is less than 60 minutes, you might actually not need something like that. So you won't need electrolytes or carbohydrate. You will need water. Regardless, you'll need water. But you won't require having carbohydrates or electrolytes, okay? So anything over that 1 hour, we'll get into that, okay? So there's no performance enhancement in studies found that have had sport drinks in something that's shorter than an hour, so you can save your money and just have some water, okay? Because if you think about it too, if you're ingesting carbohydrates, so if you're having your sport drink, you have to digest, you have to absorb, and then it has to get to your muscles. So under that hour, you probably won't actually be getting any energy from that drink. Like it won't actually get into your system soon enough for you to actually use it because your activity is so short, okay? So it won't necessarily be used. One thing that I will say though is that they found that having some sort of flavor or swishing some sport drink in your mouth actually gives you perceived energy. So if you're using it for that, if you are feeling a bit tired and you just want to swish it around, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't also have to be carbohydrate, it can just be something flavored, okay? So you don't necessarily need the energy, it's just kind of like a boost of like, hey, I might be getting energy. That's kind of what the brain thinks when it's swishing some sort of flavor in your mouth, okay? So that would be the only thing that I would probably suggest in that situation. But yeah, water is perfectly fine to rehydrate in those types of training situations. So that would be the 400 to 800 milliliters, depending on how heavy a sweater you are, what kind of intensity it is, that kind of thing. That makes sense. Am I too fast? No? Okay, good. All right, so activity over 60-minute duration or very high intensity. So you're thinking about someone who's running a half marathon or something like that, it's like 2 hours of running straight. They probably need energy as well as electrolytes and water, okay? So that's when a Gatorade would definitely be a good idea, or it could be water and food sources of carbohydrate and electrolytes, okay? So essentially the water suggestion stays the same, it's just that you might want to add more carbohydrate. So essentially you're looking for a 6 to 8% carbohydrate drink. So the drink that I made, I'll show you guys in a little bit, or a Gatorade would be around that 6 to 8% of carbohydrate to water content, essentially. Or you can look at 30 to 80 grams per hour for food or from drink, okay? So if you're looking at having a banana or something like that mid-game, if it's a 2-hour game and you're working really, really hard, then that carbohydrate would fit into that 30 to 80 gram, okay? So yeah, it is definitely personal. You don't have to have a sport drink. Some people prefer to eat food. Some people don't want to eat food because it doesn't sit very good, but that's also personal preference. So it could be food, it could be sport drink, but you'll probably need some energy if it's over an hour and of high intensity, okay? That make sense? But always water throughout. that's the main goal. Okay. Oh yeah. Put this in because I knew I'd forget. So tournaments may look differently. Okay. So the only other time that I would suggest that if your games are shorter than an hour and you might actually a sport drink might be helpful is if you have multiple games in a day. So you might have breaks in between, but your body is probably not going to rehydrate properly. So you might be using a sport drink later in the day or in the morning if you're trying to rehydrate from like if it's an early morning practice or a game or that kind of thing too, right? So that would be the only thing, one of the only situations where I think that might be a little bit different. Again, that's very individual, but you can look at doing that for tournaments too, because you'll probably need some energy if you're playing multiple games in one day. Make sense? Okay. All right, myth or fact? I drank enough water during my session, so I don't need to rehydrate after. Is this true or is this false? Who thinks it's true? Drank enough during your session, so you don't need to drink more after. Oh, good. It's a myth. A lot of people think, well, I was drinking water throughout my whole practice or throughout my whole game. Why do I need to keep drinking water afterwards? Like I was rehydrating, right? But you're actually probably ending your session a little bit dehydrated, and so you are still going to be dehydrating after your session because your muscles don't just stop working, your heart just doesn't stop beating, right? You're going to still be dehydrating. So that's why we say that you need to drink back what you lost, but also drink back a little bit more. So you cover yourself for that time where you're drinking back everything that you need. So that's why we say aiming for that 125 to 150% of sweat loss. So if we're calculating your sweat rate, there's some more math up here for you guys. But if we're calculating your sweat rate and what you lost, then we'll calculate how much water you actually need to bring that back up. And then that's how much water you need to have in those 2 to 6 hours, depending on how late it is, after your activity, okay? So for example, that person that we calculated was 1,300 milliliters, so they need about 1.5 liters to almost 2 liters of water in about 4 hours after their training because they lost a lot of water during that training session, okay? If you're not calculating, you can just use that 400 to 800 milliliter range and then use a little bit more than that, so about 500 to maybe almost 1 liter then, okay? So that would be per hour of activity. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you still want to be hydrating afterwards, and you want to be hydrating more than what you lost during your activity. So yes, hydrate after your sports. And also a lot of people, I don't know why this was in a bunch of textbooks that teachers kept saying, don't restrict sodium after. I don't know that a lot of people that do, but I feel like putting it in here because apparently people do. So I haven't met anybody who does, but if you do restrict sodium in your diet in general, don't do that after activity because it will help rehydrate you, okay? And that's food or beverage. Okay. All right, last in this category, there's no such thing as drinking too much water. Is this true or is this false? Who thinks this is true? Who thinks this is false? Okay. I'm gonna change their answer. All right, so this is a myth. There is such a thing as drinking too much water. So, like I said before, it can disrupt your sleep, so that's one reason why it's probably not good. But also it's called overhydration or hyperhydration. It can also be detrimental to performance, okay? This is when you're drinking a lot of water and your pure's clear all the time, you're peeing all the time, okay? It's called water intoxication. So hyponatremia, which just means low sodium in your blood, can be really, really not good for your health in general and beyond performance, okay? So you might be nauseous, you might have some confusion, dizziness, spells, sometimes seizures, and that can actually lead to death. So it's really not a good situation to be in. So you want to make sure you're not just chugging it back. Also, that's probably not fun for you to go pee all the time. You'll feel like it's slushing around. You can get cramped from drinking too much. And then that sleep disruption piece as well. So yes, there can be too much water. It doesn't happen that often, but it can occur in some recreational athletes that aren't maybe working as hard or as long or sweating that much. So then they overdrink water, or it can be in somebody who has a lower sweat rate naturally or a lower body size. So they don't need as much water, but they're trying to drink as much water as Sally is drinking or something like that, right? So make sure that it is individualized so that you're not following what someone else is doing too. Does that make sense? So that's my caution on water. Okay. All right, so now we'll cover some tips to stay hydrated. Food, myth or fact, food can contribute 20% of our daily hydration needs. Who thinks this is true? Who thinks 20 is false? Okay, maybe. So this is true. So a lot of people forget about food. It's not just about water, or it's not just about milks or those kinds of things. 20% of our hydration does come from the food we eat. There are a lot of foods that have high water content, like watermelon, cantaloupe, like they have 90% water content as well. So if you think about us, like as humans, we have, 60 to 65%, and some of our body parts are really high in water, so does food. Okay, so a lot of vegetables too, like celery, cucumber, lettuce, zucchini, soups, broths, those kinds of things also count. I put milk in this category. A lot of people put that into fluids, but it has more than just water in it. Okay, so food is definitely one thing to also consider in your hydration needs and how it's affecting your hydration. Okay. I also want to talk about foods that are high in certain electrolytes. First, I just want to say that you don't necessarily have to eat more of these if you're an athlete or if you're exercising. You just want to make sure that you have them, okay? Because a lot of the time you get enough through food, so you don't necessarily need more. So some salt, so sodium and chloride, you get from pretzels, pickles, soups, sport drinks, those kinds of things. Potassium is found in bananas, potatoes, milk, yogurt, very common foods, so you're probably not doing too bad if you're doing that. I think tomatoes as well, like tomato juice. Calcium, so all the dairy. There's also leafy greens that are really high in calcium, so your broccoli, your spinach, and those kinds of things too. Magnesium is one that some people have a little bit of a harder time with. So nuts and seeds, if you don't eat any nuts and seeds, it's a little bit harder to get magnesium, but whole grain, spinach, kale also will contribute some magnesium to your diet. Does any of that surprise you guys for food sources? No? Okay. All right. And then also how to increase intake. So I mentioned before about how having a flavor can kind of boost up your energy a little bit, like just give you more perceived energy, gives you something to taste that's other than water. A lot of times people are like, oh, I'm just so tired of drinking water. So flavor it, right? So you can add berries, lemon juice, cucumber, something else in your water. You can dilute Gatorade or something like that, so you can have something other than water to drink. I think a lot of people will say that they drink more water when it doesn't taste like water. So that's something that can help you if you find that that's boring. A lot of people also like really, really cold water, so you can add some ice, or the opposite. Some people hate cold water when they're working out or doing sports. So figure out what works for you, right? If you like really cold water, freeze a water bottle, add some water to it. And if you don't, then just leave it in the car or leave it inside, whatever it is that you want to do to leave it for room temperature, okay? And lastly is make your own sport drink. So I made a sport drink for everyone. So you can save some money. It's really, really easy to make. And you can also save money, which is good, and also save on plastic, which is also good, yay for the environment. So here's the recipe. I tripled the recipe, and I also broke the salt shaker, so I might be a little bit saltier than it's supposed to. So I apologize in advance, but you can taste it. There's little Dixie cups, you can come and try it afterwards. So 2 cups of water. If you want some lemon or lime juice, I use lemon juice. So you can use maple syrup or fruit juice. I find fruit juice is a little bit simpler. It actually adds a little bit more color, so it seems a little bit more appetizing. So I use, apple, orange, peach, and then a little bit of salt. Essentially just a pinch of salt is all you really need, not as much as I did, so that you are getting that salt, that electrolyte in there as well. All right? Has anybody ever made a homemade sport drink before? A couple? Okay, so that's good. Okay, good. For those of you who haven't, you can come try it if you're okay with a little bit of salt, and then see how that tastes. It is actually quite tasty. I don't mind it at all. All right, so I will do a quick recap. So water and electrolytes are crucial for body function and performance. I hope that I hammered that home. So there's 4 ways to check your hydration status. So 2 that are self-monitoring, so your urine frequency and volume, and also your urine color. And then also we did the testing, so the USG, urine-specific gravity testing, and also sweat rates. Hydration strategies should be individualized. So depending on where you live, the climate, what kind of sport you're doing, intensity, duration, all those kinds of things like we talked about. So you want to drink water during activity that's under 60 minutes, and then you might want to consider a sport drink or something else if it's over 60 minutes, or the water and food combination. And then also you also want to rehydrate a bit more after your exercise, so that 125 to 150% of what you were losing. So the diet that includes fruit, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds will help you with getting enough electrolytes and also boosting up your water content. Then we talked about how making drinking water easier if you add flavor or ice, and also you can save some money if you make your own at home. Yeah, lastly, just enjoy drinking water at all times. Bring your water bottles with you, which I see a lot of you guys do, so that's really great. And then also with meals. A lot of people don't think about drinking water with meals, but you can just sip it throughout, and that's just another way of getting it in. So yeah, that's my presentation on hydration. I think I'm a little bit early, but okay. Any questions for me? Yep.
Okay, so if you were doing a low intensity workout for longer than 60 minutes, should you just use water or a sports drink?
You could. I would say if it's getting more towards that 2-hour range, like if we're getting over an hour and a half, then I would probably think about something else. Yeah, and it also probably depends on how much you're sweating. If you don't feel like you're, like, you know, if it's an easy jog, you might actually need something, but if it's just like a practice where you're learning position and you're not really doing that much activity, but you're still at practice for an hour and a half, you might not need it, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
What about cyclists that do a 2-hour ride on Tuesdays and Thursdays and have to hydrate after the ride, but they don't want to be up all night going to the washroom? What are some strategies that they can do?
That's when you would want something. If it's a 2-hour ride, you would definitely want something with electrolytes in it, and that also means during, but also after. Okay, so you want something with electrolytes before and after, so that you don't have to drink as much, because it will help you rehydrate, if that makes sense. Okay, and then also in the morning, if you're finding that you're still dehydrated, you can have something with a pinch of salt in the morning as well, and that will help you rehydrate as well. So you want to make sure you're drinking in the morning too. Okay, because yeah, I don't want you to wake up in the middle of the night to pee all the time, but making sure you're getting some during, after, and also the morning after would be helpful. Does that make sense? Good question. Yeah, there are certain scenarios that are a bit different. But, yeah. Anybody have any other questions? No? You can always come up after if you don't want to ask in front of everyone. I'm definitely open to questions when you come and have some sport drink.
Okay, so if nobody has any more questions, thanks, Brianne. That was excellent. If you want to come and talk to Brianne privately up front, that's cool. Thank you for being here today. Hope you learned some things that you can take home, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Thanks very much.